So before I get started, full disclosure, okay, my first video, I was recording it with my Zoom pod track and the batteries died on me within the first minute, and I ended up recording with my iPhone audio instead of the audio of this microphone that I have here. So I'm redoing this video all over again from scratch just for all of you. So without further ado, let us talk about The Last of Us 2, okay? Some of you are kind of silly, and I'm just going to say this now. Now, granted, this game came out multiple years ago, okay, so you're probably wondering what's the purpose of doing a video about it now. Well, because it's my channel, I can do whatever I want, and quite frankly, it is kind of relevant now because we have the show that's out right now, and the controversy of Joel's death is something that's got a lot of you wound up kind of tight. So we're going to talk about some silly story beats and points that people often talk about the show. We're going to primarily talk about Abby's character. That's the primary focus of this video. So let's just get into it, okay? So first point that I want to discuss is Abby's physique. Not the one from the show. I know they picked a little string bean for her. That's besides the point. I want to talk about the video game version because that's really the version that most people are angry and complain about. So Abby is this extremely brolic, physically imposing woman, you know. In the game, I think one of the characters referred to her as like an ox build, you know what I mean? So she is definitely an imposing figure, which would lead to the people that she does work with having respect for her, you know what I mean? She's not just some dainty little soldier that can't do anything. She's actually very capable. Okay, so one of the criticisms is that she is unable to attain that physique in the apocalypse. Now, maybe, maybe not. It depends. Now, if any of you actually played the game instead of artificially hating it because some angry YouTuber told you not to like it, if you played the game, the town, or rather the stadium where her and her people rest, they do have gyms in the facility, and they made it a point to show you that they have gyms. On top of that, they are also growing their own crops, and they have food that is readily being distributed to everybody. So they're not really starving, and they're able to work out. Now, if you want to do that and you throw it on top of 20 plus years in an apocalypse, and also the fact that, you know, Abby was born in this world. She wasn't born in a pre-apocalyptic world where, you know, everyone is just soft for the sake of being soft. She had to be tough in order to endure the catastrophes of living in this world that she finds herself in. So her wanting to get muscular in order to have a better chance at survival is not completely unrealistic, especially when she has a vendetta. She is out for revenge. She wants to take everyone's beloved Joel away from Ellie because Joel murdered her father, which in turn makes her a sympathetic villain, which are often, in my opinion, the best written villains. You don't really want a villain that's a mustache twirling evil for the sake of being evil, over the top villain. I've always thought those were kind of silly. They don't really make a lot of sense. You know, it's more compelling when you have somebody that has a justifiable reason for being angry and wanting to take someone out. So in this case, we're going to get to the Joel part, okay? Everyone's upset that they killed Joel. All right. I need you to be aware of something. This game doesn't belong to Joel. He's not the main character anymore. He is a side character. He is a setup for the greater story. His story arc, his character was fully realized at the end of the first game. Okay, he lost his daughter in the beginning of the apocalypse, and 20 years later, he found himself with another daughter, a surrogate daughter, and he wanted to protect her, which he did. So he fulfilled his story arc and actually lived a peaceful life for multiple years after that. So this isn't Joel's game. This game belongs to Ellie and Abby. They are a mirror image of each other. They are what one could have been versus the other had things turned out differently. So you got to keep that in mind. They're a contrast of each other. So Joel dying, it's not that unrealistic, okay? In the real world, people die all the time for whatever reason. It doesn't always have to be their finest moment. You don't have to make an entire episode dedicated to them, and it doesn't have to have the best writing. Sometimes shit just happens, and it's really unfortunate, but again, that's the world that we live in. You know, you can walk outside and get hit by a car. You know, you didn't have the craziest day where you sold $1 million in stock and, you know, you met the woman of your dreams. You got married, got her pregnant simultaneously, and bought a house and a Ferrari. You didn't do all of that before you died. Sometimes you go outside and get hit by a car. You know, sometimes you just don't wake up in the morning. So these are things that can happen. So him being killed in the way that he was, although kind of contrived and unrealistic in the sense on how Abby found Joel, him dying was expected. He had it coming to him. Okay, like, listen, whether you agree with what he did in the first game or not doesn't change the fact that he is not a good person, nor is he viewed as a good person. Okay, if you had started the story with Abby and her family first, right, and you saw this maniac just coming in and gunning everyone down, just trying to find a cure for the entire world, you know, you would think that they are the bad guys and that Abby is a protagonist trying to get justice. That's how you would think about it. Okay, so be very mindful of that when you're talking about taking our beloved Joel away for some sort of agenda. By the way, let me touch up upon the agenda real quick. Okay, for the majority of people that didn't play this game or hate it because they think there was some sort of political messaging behind it, it's just silly. Play the game for yourself and experience it. If you don't like it because you think the story is crappy, then that's fine. But not playing it because some YouTuber that had to artificially get you angry just so that you subscribe to his channel told you not to play it, it's kind of silly. There's a lot of people that didn't play the game, which I was one of those people for a while, by the way, that hated it just for the sake of hating it because somebody I follow didn't like it. You know, and that's just dumb. Why would you want to attach yourself to someone and not have your own perspectives, your own thoughts, your own processes on how you live your life? You know, are you a follower or are you somebody that makes your own decisions and doesn't worry about what other people think? So be mindful about that when you're making these decisions. And again, the game itself is good. It does have its moments. Yes, it has horrible pacing. I will agree with you on that. And you know what I mean? Sometimes some of the writing doesn't make sense, but it doesn't stop the fact from... It doesn't take away from the fact that the game was actually pretty decent. You know what I mean? So let's move on to another common criticism. Ellie and Dina being lesbians. All right, first of all, it isn't their entire character arc. They had a makeout scene in the beginning of the game, and then they had sex later on, which, yeah, sure, whatever. But that happens in the real world. I promise you gay people exist. If you go outside, if you go to a bar, if you go to a club, your gym, the grocery store, you know, maybe even in your own family, everywhere you go, I promise you there's somebody that's gay, okay, or bisexual or whatever the hell they identify as. There are people in this world that exist in that way. So for you to say that this was an agenda and it's DEI and, you know, it's woke, they're trying to destroy the original vision of this miraculously incredible first game that we all played, it's just really silly, okay? Like, stop the nonsense. People like this exist. Now, granted, I will extend an olive branch, okay? Had they made Ellie and Dina gay and then that was their entire story arc, then that would have been horrible, because I don't think someone's sexuality should be their entire character arc. They should have compelling stories and reasonings and justifications for why they do the things that they do. And them being gay is only a small portion of the game itself. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter that much. You know what I mean? It wasn't their sole focus. So let's just stop with that criticism right away. It's kind of dumb, but let's move on. Okay, so what is another criticism that everyone had? Oh, Joel. Okay. A lot of people were saying that him dying was bad writing because the Joel from part 1 would have never let his guard down. He wouldn't have told them their name. He wouldn't have been so trustworthy to them right away. Now, yeah, you're right. The Joel from part 1 wouldn't have done that. But the Joel from part 2 has lived multiple years in a community called Jackson that's huge. They have running water. They have electricity. They have movie nights. They can customize sandwiches and eat them however they want. Joel is busy with his hands. He's able to utilize the skill sets that he has. He's starting to live a normal life again. So yeah, he got a little softer. And you know what? Let's also not forget about the fact that he's also a little older. The man is in his 60s. He's no longer a young man. Now, yes, sure, it might have been silly for him to reveal who he was, but again, they were also in a crazy situation. You know, he saved her life, and then they escaped together. So there might have been even a little bonding there. And let's not forget that Joel does have a soft spot for younger women. You know what I mean? And not like in a crazy, like, pedo way. It's just more like a nurturing father. You know, Abby is a little bit older than Ellie, I'm sure, but he also probably saw her as, okay, this young lady needs help. You know, Joel obviously had a complex from allowing his daughter to die so early in the first game, which is one of the reasons that his character arc was fulfilled, because in the beginning of the first game, he let his daughter die, right? And then he ends up having an opportunity where he could prevent his surrogate daughter that he's been traveling across the entire country with for months and months on end, that they've grown attached to each other. He didn't want to let her die. So him doing what he did fulfilled his character arc, like I mentioned earlier. So this wasn't his game. So him being a little more trusting towards Abby, I don't think is completely unrealistic, although contrived in how they found each other. You know, it was just pure coincidence, you know what I mean? But heck, sometimes that's the world we live in, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to justify that portion of the writing, but I will say, you know, for whatever it's worth, yeah, that part wasn't handled very well, but him dropping his guard in the world that they live in after living a soft and cushy life essentially is kind of realistic. So, you know, we'll get that out of the way now. So, okay, another thing. Why did they make you play as Abby? Well, they made you play as Abby because they wanted you to feel sympathetic towards her. They wanted you to understand her reasoning for hunting our beloved Joel that everybody loves so much. You know, he killed her father. He killed an entire group of people that were essentially trying to save the world, whether or not they handled it the right way, which the Fireflies absolutely did not handle it the right way. I believe that had they allowed Ellie to wake up and make her own decision, would have given Joel a little more peace of mind. He kind of felt like they were just going to straight up murder her. You know, it took so long for them to get to her, for Joel to deliver her to them. You know, they could have waited a little longer for her to wake up, and at the very least, give her the opportunity. And you know what? She would have died because she wanted her life to have meaning, which is one of the reasons that she was so upset with him in the first place. Not because he lied to her, but because she felt that her life having meaning, and she would have given it away if it meant something, because she lost so many people along the way. She wanted to contribute, and she was a very perceptive young girl, and at her age, very intelligent. So yeah, it was kind of realistic that she was angry at him, you know, because he took the choice away from her, whether or not he saved her or not. You know, now I know what a lot of you are thinking. Oh, you know, if you had a kid, you wouldn't let them do that. And you know what? You're probably right. I don't think I would. And neither would Abby's father, because Marlene actually told him in that flashback, you know, if it was Abby, would you perform the surgery? And he never answered her. Even though Abby kind of told him, yeah, she'd be okay with it, he still never answered it. So him being a father himself, he wouldn't have sacrificed his own daughter. So that's just a little side tangent off of what I really want to talk about in this video. But just know that the Fireflies also kind of did things recklessly. It still doesn't make Joel a good person or, you know, a beloved human being. You know, you got to remember, these are bad people. All of them are bad people. Another one is, why didn't Abby kill Tommy and Ellie in order to leave no witnesses? The reason that happened was because the game, excuse me, a little bit of a burp there. The reason is because the game wanted you to make them seem like they were good guys. The WLF were made to be good people, and they only wanted to hurt Joel because he was the one that caused him so much pain. Now, even though they kind of contradict themselves with how they tortured him, essentially, that was the reasoning. Now, I also think that was kind of bad writing, because realistically, in another world, they would have killed them for no loose ends, especially when Ellie straight up said, you're dead for that, because she straight up told them, I'm going to kill all of you, you know, so you might as well kill me now. And they didn't. And that was also Abby, I guess, trying to show mercy. But granted, Abby actually created another version of herself when she killed Joe in front of Ellie, because now Ellie was out for blood and she wanted to be the one to exact her revenge, and she didn't care what she had to do to get it. So it's the game is basically a story of tit for tat. You know, one person hurts you, so you hurt the other person, and then this happens back and forth until the whole world is destroyed. Okay, and this is evident at the end of the game when none of them end up killing each other, but Ellie is so scarred from the experience that she's missing fingers and she can't play the guitar anymore because she was maimed from her blood crusade of wanting to get revenge for Joel. She was changed as a person forever, which inevitably destroyed her relationship with Dina. And that also mirrors what happens with Abby and Owen. They used to date, and he ended up getting with Mel because he thought that Abby was too nuts. She made her entire life's purpose to get revenge, and he did not like the person she was becoming. They could have chosen to be happy. They didn't have to continue what they were doing. Both groups lived a relatively decent life. Now, granted, you had other groups of people in the world and you still had monsters, but they built working communities that you know, with given time, they probably could have rebuilt the entire world, or at the very least, good sections of it where the infected weren't such an issue. But because both characters were so bloodlusted, they couldn't allow themselves to live a normal life, and they lost their respective partners as a result of it. Once more, what happens to one character mirrors the other. So that is primarily the purpose of the game. The game isn't necessarily about forgiveness, but just understanding that when is enough. Somebody has to stop at some point, because if not, the whole world will be destroyed. An eye for an eye, after all, leaves the whole world blind, right? Or at least that's what they say. But yeah, in any case, I don't want to blabber on too much about this, especially because I did a recording about this literally 15 minutes ago, and my device turned off. So it ended up being the horrible iPhone audio, which I did not want to share with all of you. I wanted to give you good quality audio, and that I feel I did. Okay. I will say one more thing. If you find yourself in an apocalypse and you are a man or a woman, right? And you feel that after 20 plus years of you living in this world that you're not going to put on some muscle, you are lying to yourself. With that said, done.